we will see completing the square. So completing the square uses a type of trinomial called a perfect square trinomial, and it's really given away by this last term here. It's always going to be a perfect square, so something that you can square root. And what happens is you can factor these the same as we always do. You need to try to multiply to 81, and then at the same time you're going to try to add to negative 18. So if we're trying to multiply to 81, add to negative 18, that's going to have to be negative 9, negative 9. So we're going to factor this left side. It's going to factor into x minus 9, which we're going to rewrite as x minus 9 squared. And that's going to equal to 49. Then to undo the square, we're going to square root. So we'll get x minus 9 equals plus or minus 7. Oops, I got to put my equal sign there. Equals plus or minus 7. Then we do our last algebra steps. Add 9. We'll get x is equal to 9 plus or minus 7. So we have to do both of those options. So plus 7 would give me 16. Minus 7 would give me 2. So my two values are 16 and 2. Sometimes we are not given a perfect square trinomial. Like if you look at 17, can you square root negative 17 or 17? No, not a perfect square. So we got to make up our own perfect square trinomial. So I like to set them up. X squared plus 16x plus something needs to equal 17 plus something. And all I did was to get that 17 out of there, because we are going to change that into a perfect square. So we don't need the 17 on that side. We're going to move it over to make it a perfect square trinomial. So now we have a blank space right here that we're going to try to use to make a perfect square trinomial. So we need to take the b term, cut that in half, and square it. So 16 divided by 2 squared is going to give me 64. So there's my perfect square that's going to complete the square. So now I have two numbers that would multiply to 64, add to 16, and we'd be set to go. So now we're going to be able to factor. So what multiplies to 16 multiplies to 64, adds to 16. That's going to be 8 and 8. So x plus 8 squared. 17 plus 64 is going to be 81. Continue our steps just to make it stick out a little bit. We'll change this to blue. You're going to square root next to cancel out the squares, square root, which leaves us with, moving up to here, x plus 8 is equal to plus or minus 9. And subtract 8 over. We'd be left with x is equal to negative 8 plus or minus 9. And we have to figure out both of those results. We're going to take negative 8 plus 9, which gives me 1, and negative 8 minus 9, which gives me negative 17. So there's our two results, 1 and negative 17. So those are the two types of examples that we saw in lesson 58.